Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to FoundFlix. On this Inning Explain, we're looking at the recent sequel, A Quiet Place Part 2, where we follow the continuing fight for survival of the Abbot family after the events of the first film. They must now face the terrors of the outside world, and come to realize the alien creatures that hunt by sound are not the only threats that lurk beyond the sand path. Part 2 is definitely an accurate description, as this really is a direct continuation of the first film, picking up right where we left off then. Yet Part 2 feels much simpler overall, especially story-wise compared to the first. It really is just a very straightforward setup going from point A to point B, with some dangerous encounters along the way. That's it. Really. This also ends on an abrupt note like the first, but here it feels perhaps a bit underwhelming. Like right when things are really getting interesting, swoop, it's over. And I can't help but point out that John Krasinski and Emily Blunt were both very reluctant to return for a sequel in the first place, and the movie actually kind of feels this through it. Also, the first one didn't really even feel like it needed a sequel, but ultimately they were convinced. All like, fine, we'll do a sequel, here you go. Money please! There were a lot of intriguing aspects of the world and the creatures that were left underdeveloped in the first. And really there is a lot that could have been done to expand things, but they almost go even further away from that, leaving us in the end with even more dangling threads than before. Obviously, I had some issues with this in particular related to the story, yet the action and suspense sequences are just as compelling and well crafted as the first. In particular, the opening sequence is honestly kind of amazing, which is also funny because it really has no reason to exist story-wise. It's just there to start things off on an exciting note, which it does accomplish admirably. So the overall story is not much to write home about, but the action does keep the high watermark of the first. With all that said, let's check back in with the Abbots in A Quiet Place Part 2, breaking down the story, including the tidbits of important character arcs that are there, and explaining the ending and what it means for the franchise going forward. That's right, we got more of these in the works, baby. One of the many big question marks left after the first movie is just how the invasion began, and we get to see this for ourselves, starting off on day 1. Things are peaceful and quiet in the small town square, maybe a little too quiet. Lee stops by a general store for some fruit, on the way out recognizing the spaceship toy that dooms his son in Part 1. The invasion has already begun around the world, with word on the news about an insurmountable death toll in Shanghai. The owner Raj, thinking it was some kind of bomb. Yeah, what do you know, Raj? He hurries to catch Marcus's ball game, and it looks like the whole town has come out, everyone enjoying their idyllic small town lives. Another father, Emmett, is watching his own son play, as well as listening to another game on the radio. He asks Reagan how to sign the word dive, and she shows him. That's about what you'd expect, Lee chuckling, it's a tough one. It's Marcus's turn at the bat, Evelyn first signing for him to just breathe before stepping up to the plate. He looks downright terrified to even swing, as Emmett's radio suddenly turns to static. A dog begins to bark, and as we know, dogs are always the first to know something ain't right. Another pitch is lined up, but Marcus is entranced by something in the sky, a giant flaming object crashing down through the clouds. Yeah, that's pretty distracting. The crowd goes completely silent. Upon seeing it himself, Lee rounds up the family, ready to get a move on. The others soon follow, the field emptying in a hurry. In the square, about to drive off, a cop friend of Lee's shows up and fills him in that they have officers on their way to a crash site nearby, and startlingly, a creature flies on the scene and crashes right into his car. Evelyn, meanwhile, flips to the radio stations, getting no signal of any kind. A creature lands right onto a car in front of them, crushing it completely, and she maneuvers past it, narrowly avoiding other vehicles and people fleeing. They come to a bus barreling right for them, her quickly flooring it in reverse. They do avoid the bus, but still smash into a pole. The others scramble into a local watering hole to take cover. Raj looks terrified and begins to pray. Well, no harm in covering all your bases, I suppose. Lee puts a hand over his mouth for him to stay quiet, just as a creature looms to the front window. It opens its head to fully utilize its super sensitive hearing. A girl's phone rings, exposing them, and it bursts through the glass. Everything immediate madness. Lee and Reagan hoof it out the back, the creature rampaging after, busting up all kinds of stuff along the way. The officer opens fire upon it, which doesn't even slow it down, and it gets him with its gangly claws. So now we know just how things went down when they began, and also how unprepared we were for our unwelcome visitors. Much is still skipped right over though, as we return to the moment after we left the surviving Abbot family, day 474. The events of the first film and the creature's attack has left their farm uninhabitable, which forces them out into the unknown world. First, gotta get some important supplies. supplies. Regan fetches a portable PA, just in case they run into any aliens on the road, as well as retrieving her dad's marked up map of the area. Mom wrestles her way through the water-filled basement to retrieve some oxygen bottles for the baby. Yeah, remember the whole baby in a box thing? It's back! Regan spends a tender moment alone up on the silo, where Lee always had a fire going, seeing another one not too far off into the distance. She pulls out his watch, clutching it meaningfully, and getting teary-eyed in remembrance. He did die just like a day ago, so yeah, still pretty fresh wound, I'd imagine. Now they're really entering uncharted waters, as Lee left behind a trail to show what proximity they knew was safe, and now they find themselves at the literal end of the line. Looks like there's no going back now, Abbots. They encounter some overgrown train tracks. Up above, Regan spots the fire she saw, which is still smoldering. They traverse through a hole in a fence, carefully going through to stay silent. Evelyn accidentally whaps her backpack, but it's no big deal. However, this distracts her, causing her to carelessly miss a trip line right in front of her. It sends down some bottles that jangle loudly, Evelyn croaking to run. They break into a full sprint and see someone is watching them from above through a gun sight. Marcus, too, is a bit accident prone, it seems, stepping right into a bear trap. He can't help but scream his head off, Evelyn doing her best to shush him and cover them up. The baby is now crying, so they put it into his oxygen box, and Evelyn pulls a trap off his leg, causing him to scream in even more absolute agony. She takes a moment to give him a hug, but there's no time to waste, hearing a screech in the distance. A creature blasts right through the gate, and Regan decides to fight back. She does her hearing aid trick, the shrill noise causing the creature to leave its juicy, weak insides exposed, and Evelyn blows it away. At least they can defend themselves now. Entering another structure, a man, obviously Emmett despite being covered up, snatches the kids and then her away. He covers her mouth, seeing there's another guy crawling its way down the wall. They try to avoid detection, but it can still sense their presence. It crashes through some barrels and crawls up to the scaffolding, crawling right over their heads, which was pretty terrifying. They all jump into a big pipe and down into the relative safety of a big old boiler. Here they can seal themselves inside and wait safely until the coast is clear, or at least until the air runs out. Emmett can sense that the family is in dire straits and coldly lets them down. He can't help them in any way. There's nowhere near enough supplies for all of them. He still does appear ashamed of what he says, hiding his face away in the shadow, although Evelyn is still able to recognize him. She has one final big card to hopefully sway him, showing off the boxed baby. And what are you gonna do, say no to a little baby? I don't think so, Emmett. He shows off the luxurious digs he's been living in this weird huge building, and at least there's some leftover alcohol, which they use to clean Marcus's wound. Also painful, which they wisely do in the furnace to shield his screams. Regan finds amongst his belongings a drawing of a young boy, and when seeing this, Emmett snatches it up without a word. Obviously one of his kids. Well, we know from the opening he had a whole family, making us wonder if they're dead or what. Yeah, which helps us piece together his loner and standoffish nature. He does reveal as much to Evelyn, having lost both his boys on day one, and his wife Nora 11 weeks ago. He gets choked up, saying that she was sick. They held out at home as long as possible, and then the pain became too much, naturally leading to her screaming all the time, which is why they were forced to come here. The building's walls are 3 feet thick concrete that provides excellent soundproofing. Well, that'll come in handy. Evelyn inquires about the fire from their farm. Did he know that it was Lee burning it? Yes, he nods, but when it came to thinking of ever coming for them, no, sorry, not so much, lady. He's clearly got that classic survivor mentality. Even if easily considered selfish, survival is paramount to everything and everyone else. Can't go around helping every person out there. It only leads to trouble. It also sounds like he's had some unfortunate encounters with other survivors, grumbling something has happened to the people who are left. They're not the kind of people we're saving. They are then given a whole new trajectory in their journey when a signal breaks through over the radio, hearing the classic croon of Beyond the Sea. Emmett is well aware of the transmission, causing Regan to become confused, as Lee must have heard it. Things get a bit heated, calling him a liar after saying that he's been hearing it for months. There is a more logical geographical reason why. They couldn't actually pick up the signal until they were out of the valley that surrounded their hometown. He shrugs that her dad couldn't have made it work either, and she gets upset, telling him that he's nothing like him. His hospitality is short-lived, telling him that they have to leave in the morning and tries to make it perfectly clear that there is nothing left out there. However, Reagan isn't convinced, waking her brother up for a secret boiler meeting. She thinks the song is actually a signal telling them where to look. She tracked down the station that is broadcasting from, and it's an island just off the coast. She's confident that it's a simple one-day journey, and then she'll be able to find a boat. Marcus thinks this is a terrible idea, pleading that she can't do this. Unfazed, she lays out her grand plan. If she can get to the broadcast, she can replace the song with the hearing aid noise, creating a kind of broadcast death signal to take out their otherworldly foes en masse. "I can save us all," she signs hopefully. He threatens in retaliation to tell Mom, still not wanting her to do it. Her motivation comes into focus. Believing it's what Lee would have done, she's trying to follow in her father's heroic footsteps. He does remind her how that turned out, shooting back, "Yeah, look how that went." Yeah, fair point, Marcus. Yet she is determined to carry out on her journey, setting out early the next morning, following along the train tracks. Once she's discovered missing, her mother is in shambles. She's already lost him and doesn't want to lose her too. She pokes at Emmett's whole people suck thing, telling him it's a shame that Lee isn't here. He'd be able to convince him that she's the kind of people worth saving. Nice guilt trip there. Good luck coming back from that, buddy. Come on, where's the humanity, Emmett? Reagan continues her trek, approaching the next train station, where there's weirdly a lot of shoes left behind. I mean, it makes sense you want to be quiet, but that still is a lot of shoes. Where do they come from? There's even a train car still sitting ominously on the tracks, and she decides to dig around inside for supplies. Inside, there's clear evidence of an attack, like rotting bodies, and of course, there's the massive gaping hole and claw marks on the side. So yeah, there's that. She carefully sets down her stuff, and after opening the operator door, finds a first aid kit hung on the wall. As she brings it back, a body drops back, surprising her, eliciting a problematic reactionary gasp at the sight. Well, that's not good. An alien is already tuned into her screen, climbing inside and going right after her. She unleashes her killer squeal, and with it incapacitated, fires a shot, but only wings its fleshy innards. Cocking the gun with one hand proves difficult, the creature stomping closer and closer. Another shot rings out, and guess who? It's Emmett. Well, maybe you do actually care about people after all, you big softy. Also, good timing. Thanks, bud. All the commotion means they're in even more danger now, and it looks like Emmett is here to put a stop to her plan. He's going to take her back home, he says. She retorts, "What home?" Even just broaching the subject of his wife sets Emmett off, growling to never talk about her. She continues to her point. With Nora, he felt that he didn't do enough to save her, but now here's his chance to do so, getting him right in the heartstrings, Reagan. Although in the morning, it initially appears that it was all for naught. She wakes up and is unable to find her hearing aid, and when stepping outside, it looks like Emmett just straight up abandoned her. She falls to her knees, weeping and hopeless. Since she can't do her plan without the device, everything is okay though, as Emmett rejoins her. He just borrowed the stuff for protection to go searching, and he has big news. He's found them a boat! Alright, now we're talking. Got a little team-up surrogate family action developing here. Back at the warehouse, there's really not much going on. Marcus still isn't faring so well, and believing that she has no other choice, Evelyn is going to head in town to get him supplies. Wow, they really leave this poor kid all by himself a lot, huh? He has a breakdown over her leaving, her feeling that if she doesn't go, he might end up dying. Sorry, Marcus, have fun looking after Box, baby. Don't worry though, it'll only be a couple of hours. Oh yeah, it'll be fine. Her trek forces her to cross paths with a familiar bridge and the memorial that they left for their son. Now with another loss weighing on her, she leaves her wedding band behind, giving it a mournful kiss before continuing on. It's quickly nightfall and Marcus is growing worried about his mom, as well as the depleting oxygen levels that are getting really low for the baby. He comes to Emmett's faux bedroom, including a bunch more drawings of his kids, showing us just how much his family is still on his mind. I mean, obviously, right? Behind a curtain, he finds Nora'S rotting corpse there, the sight of which spooks him good. The sound has already drawn a creature to the area, hearing clicking nearby. So he grabs cover in the boiler. Oh, and don't forget the baby, although he unfortunately forgets to put something on the handle to be able to get out, effectively trapping him inside with the baby, and they're running out of oxygen. Oh no! Emmett and Reagan traverse through a small empty seaside town, then reaching the harbor where they too encounter an unexpected wrinkle. Emmett scans the boats to determine which is the most seaworthy and sees someone sneaking by in the darkness. They come to a little girl facing down. Emmett gently crawls up to her, holding out his hands, cooing "It's okay," and asking her to look at him. She lifts her face, revealing it to be all strange and spotty looking, surprising him with a noose around the neck. Others join them on the pier, and a greasy dude holds a knife up to Reagan's neck. He then gives Emmett the once-over, seeing the man's eyes are blood red, and there's lots of scars on his arms and boils and all this stuff. Seriously, what the heck happened to these people? This is probably the biggest aspect of the whole movie where I'm like, I have so many questions. Is there a disease going around or what? Alas, we'll never know, as literally no details of any kind are mentioned about any of this stuff, and this crew of misfits only makes this one appearance in the movie. So, well, maybe part 3, Quiet Place, the diseased bitches. They ultimately decide to take the girl and leave Emmett to die. As she's ushered away, Emmett signs for her to dive. Ooh, nice callback there. Back at the warehouse, Evelyn arrives just in time to see the critter make its way through the pipe below. The entire thing completely crashed through the floor. She considers what to do, and she better get a move on, seeing that they are running way low on oxygen, Marcus having to share some of the baby's limited supply. She impatiently waits until it gets on top of some spilled gas, and Emmett rushes the guy from behind. He drops his lantern, starting a fire, and wraps a chain around the man's neck, all the noise bringing an alien onto the scene. And Emmett seizes this to his advantage. He ties the man around a pole, stabs him in the leg, and dives into the water. His reactionary yell sends the creature down upon him. Good riddance, you weirdo. The creature is unaffected by the fire, yet the flames trigger the sprinklers to go off to her advantage, making it difficult for the creature to hear over the white noise, which she also did back at the farmhouse before. She gets to Marcus and shakes him back to consciousness, and joins them in the enclosure, making sure to leave a rag in place this time. Underwater, Emmett struggles to remove his chains, and is yanked back to the surface. One jumps straight into the water after him, and flails helplessly. Stupid aliens can't even swim in the water. Bad news, most of the earth is water, you chumps. Yeah, that's an idea. Can you drown these things? Is that possible? Actually, during editing, I noticed it did drown pretty quickly, too. Just push them all into the ocean, you know? In the fracas, Regan has managed to secure a boat and saves the day, grabbing Emmett on board. He hands over her hearing aid, which he had been keeping in his mouth so it wouldn't get damaged. And after all that, they did it! Time to see if this island of salvation is all it's cracked up to be. They discover what looks like a little neighborhood there, making sure to stay quiet and out of sight. That's why they're understandably shocked when encountering a bonfire with people hanging out carefree. No aliens here. Let's get that grill fired up, baby, and have a good old time. It is paradise, after all. At least for the moment. After getting some food, he meets a man on the island. Seriously, that's what we're gonna call Oscar-nominated actor Diamond Hunsu? At least he needs a name, so how about Peter? Sure. He details how they wound up here. Once the news spread that they couldn't swim, the National Guard told everyone to start loading people onto boats, although humanity reared its uglier side. After one boat got out safe, everyone started pushing forward. They started with 12 boats that day, and only 2 got out. Stupid selfish humans blowing it as usual. Dummies. Emmett then reveals what led them here, telling him that he's bringing them help, and hands over the hearing aid. Him now completely on board and understanding the real importance of Regan's plan. He fills her in that Peter's agreed to help them, and tells her sorry for doubting her, admitting that he was wrong. He too agrees with her about something else. He is nothing like Lee, but you are, and he sulks off. See, people can change. I told you, all hope isn't lost. Can I call you daddy yet? Sorry, maybe too soon. He strolls out to the beach and pulls out the drawing of his boy, but his emotional heartbreak is gonna have to be put on hold as he sees one of the boats has made its way here that we saw earlier was crawling with the things. He goes to warn the others, but it's too late. The creature emerges and goes to town on the hapless citizens. They take refuge inside a house, Peter stuffing his boy along with another in a closet, before making their way to the radio station. Peter honks in their car to draw attention away from the townsfolk screeching down the road. One lands right on the back, shredding through the roof like butter, and it sounds like it fell off, so Regan takes a peek through. Nope, still there, yay! It eventually loses its grip, rolling off the side of the road. They arrive at their FM salvation, but Peter is preoccupied with getting back to his family. He's also standing perilously close to an open garage door. Step a few feet away, bro, come on, get out of there. An alien claws him in the back, dragging him away, screaming. Okay, thanks for that 5-minute appearance, kind of a waste. Oh well, they make it inside and things are all quiet, yet the creature is still with them right down the hall. However, the studio is wide open. So long as they can stay whisper quiet, they can get into that thing and get this planet rocking. Emmett helps her get through, and Regan has to close a desk drawer to get down. And even that tiny squeak is enough for the creature to hear. It stomps right outside, listening closely. Meanwhile, the rest of the family have officially run out of time and oxygen, meaning they are gonna have to get out of this boiler. At the very least, to grab a fresh tank. What has been their plot the whole time? Seriously, they've just been hanging on a tube for the whole movie. Anyway, it looks like the coast is clear at first, until the monster shows up, and each Abbott sibling has to face down their own respective monsters. Evelyn runs back to the boiler and can't get the door closed in time, it clawing at them with its long limbs, and there's nowhere to go! The other goes after Emmett, and just about to get him, Regan blares the signal setup. She slowly backs up to the soundboard, and turns off the record, jamming her hearing aid on the microphone. Marcus hears it too over his headphones, and knows that his sister has prevailed. He turns on his own speaker. Marcus for once the man in charge. Alright, you're a big boy now. There's no no real progression for him to get to this point, but it is happening. Regan goes for an equipment pull, and Marcus retrieves a gun. He breathes purposefully, training the gun on the creature, and Regan stabs the pull right into Her's juicy head, the other falling down lifelessly, shot dead by sheepish little Marcus. So it was the kids in the end who saved the day. Isn't that special? Evelyn looks on in wonderment, her face all, wow, he's really grown up. Regan retrieves her pole, and that's it. Man, things are really just starting to get going to me. Pretty abrupt conclusion to things. Although the first film, as I mentioned, did end on a kind of similar cliffhanger note, so we don't know what happens exactly next. But the intent of the ending as we saw it is clear. It's a kind of passing of the torch to the next generation concept. Now it's the kids who are the ones who are saving the day and changing people, not the sad sap adults, who have all but given up on humanity. Well, Emmett more specifically, because as for Evelyn, what did she do? She didn't really do much of anything throughout the entire movie. She was just kind of sad for a while, and then her wiener kid saved the day. Like I said way at the top of this whole thing, everything is just very underdeveloped feeling, or maybe more just like it's shaved down to the bare minimum in a lot of ways for some inexplicable reason. Because while the ending does feel consequential, they can get that broadcast out. Yippee! That really is all that happened in the entire movie. Like I said, point A to point B. That's it, see you in part 3, folks. At this point, there is no word of a direct follow-up to this, a true part 3. However, there is, and I hate to use the dreaded word, a spin-off in the works. Now, I'm really trying not to be cynical, which is admittedly really difficult for me, but it feels like the studio is trying to devise a way to keep the franchise money train rolling without having Krasinski having to do everything. Him and Blunt, as I said, were open with the fact that they were reluctant to do a sequel, and it kind of shows. Again, Blunt is barely in this thing. The interesting thing to me, though, is I actually think there's a ton of possibilities of where to take things if they focus on the right kind of story and world building. Okay, it's not just about a fat payday, there's genuine stuff we can do here, people. Ultimately, I am a little bit optimistic for the spinoff at the very least to open up the world beyond the Abbots, kind of change up the flavor a little bit, and it's also fortunately not being put into the hands of some stupid chump, as it's Jeff Nichols who'll be writing and directing it, who is behind the very fine films Mug, Take Shelter, and Midnight Special. He's the one taking the reins on the next entry. If anything, I'm hoping his quite different style will breathe some much needed fresh air into the series, because that's what it really needs going forward, especially if we're going for a big franchise thing and a whole bunch of entries. The potential is definitely there, but you gotta make it worth it, folks. That's my takeaway, at least. Alright, that is enough rambling for now, and don't forget before we go, you can send me requests for any movies or TV shows you'd like to see me explain by sending them on any of my social media accounts at FoundFlix. What did you guys think of A Quiet Place Part 2 and its ending? What would you like to see in the upcoming spin-off? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.